Back to another episode of Official Let's Talk podcast. Today we're joined by Holly Provencal, and today we'll be talking about Scientology. Holly, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Ronan. How are you?
I'm very fine. I'm just getting on like everybody else. But tell me, Holly, what's your knowledge of Scientology? Let's go back to the basics here. Let's talk about what is Scientology, the basics of Scientology.
So Scientology originally started as Dianetics back in 1950, which was a book published by L. Ron Hubbard, all about two parts of the mind, the analytical mind and the reactive mind. The analytical mind was supposed to be this perfect processing computer that could just take care of everything. The reactive mind, which held all your moments of pain and unconsciousness, which Hubbard deemed as engrams, would interfere with your analytical mind and cause you to end up in like a sort of emotional response basis, whether you got angry at something or overreacted or didn't show emotion through what he called Dianetic auditing, which was the process of speaking to a person about these issues, going back and recalling whatever details about said incident you could remember, which according to Hubbard could go as far back as being back in the womb. So however the hell you have memory of that blows my fucking mind.
Yeah. Oh, so we just lost Holly's sound there for 2 minutes. Don't worry, she'll be back. So is your sound okay, Holly? Can you hear me? Your sound just went there. Your sound, let me see. I'll just see if I can fix this.
Is it coming through? Testing.
That is it now. Do not worry about that.
I think that might have been my fault. Actually, I think I may have hit the microphone mute button on this by accident.
It is 100% fine. I do that all the time. I have had a few guests on now that have done the same thing, and I have done the same thing. So you're 100% fine. So I think we were on there. You were saying that it was about two parts. The Scientology was two parts.
Scientology itself wasn't about two parts. Dianetics was about two parts. About the analytical mind and the reactive mind. The analytical mind was supposed to be this perfect computer, could do amazing calculations if it wasn't bogged down by the reactive mind. Now, during your life, Hubbard said that you accumulate these things called engrams, which are moments of pain and unconsciousness. And that these can screw with your analytical mind. By the way, I'm just going to say this ahead of time. I hope you don't mind swearing on this podcast.
Oh, not. Well, actually, wait until the 5-minute mark, because even though I'm not sort of making money from this here, they always say wait to the 5-minute mark and then you can say whatever you want. So
all right, cool. I can do that.
3 minutes. We're 3 minutes in, so wait another 2 minutes and then you can say whatever you want.
All right. By the way, that was my fiance, Carmen. So,
oh, that's fine. Listen, the more the merrier.
So she's heard me talk about Scientology so much. I'm sure she's probably bored of it by now.
Yeah.
But anyway, so back to the engrams, the moments of pain and unconsciousness. For example, the event of birth, Hubbard said, could be an engram because it's pain, unconsciousness to the baby, maybe a moment of unconsciousness to the mother if it's damaging enough. And that by going back to these moments of pain and unconsciousness, somehow your mind was still recording what was going on while you were unconscious, and that you could go back and recall what people may have been saying around you, what sounds you might have heard, any sort of tactile feeling or anything like that. And by going back and repeatedly talking about these traumatic incidents, that it could help to get rid of what he called emotional charge, right? And supposedly just help you stop being so, I guess, not over dramatic about it, but being, I guess what he called re-stimulated, which...
Yes. Sorry. Listen, I apologize if I interrupt. I sometimes I like to process things in my mind. But so what I've gathered from that is a very psychology based thing. It's like a mythical psychology that he's come up with here. It's like,
yeah, it's very
you know,
similar to I'm trying to think of what the word is for it. There's a word for it. It's when you go back and just talk about traumatic events.
It's like astral projection or something, or not. That's like when you come out of your body, but this is like, oh yeah, like past life events where you could like.
It can be past life, but you usually don't get onto that until you're further in Scientology. Dianetics tends to focus on this lifetime.
It's like when somebody puts you under hypnosis, and then
yes,
they can sort of bring you back to a time where you can't remember, or a past life, or an era that you were born in, or something. It's like, yeah. But one thing that stands out for me though, and by the way, I'm totally unbiased when it comes to Scientology. I don't either discredit it or I don't feed into it either. It's just a thing that I'm interested in learning about. But it seems to me straight off the bat there that he's talking about some hocus pocus stuff that, and 99% of the time when people are talking about that and they sort of put that into a religious sense, that maybe there's red flags there already. Like there's stuff that you can't prove. It can't be proven. I know all religions can't be proven, but what he's talking about there physically can't be proven. We can't remember when we were being born. It's that traumatic. Our brains haven't, or we're just new little entities.
Exactly.
We can't remember anything. And he sounds like a very intelligent person to tap into that and to try to explain that. And in doing so, it's easy to dupe people. I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying that's what he's tried to do here. But definitely we're 6 minutes in, so I can curse now. Definitely my bullshit radar is going, or my bullshit meter is going off the Richter scale here. If I wasn't lying to you, that's me telling the truth. It's like, wow, you're a genius for starting it like this, but also, how can anybody fall for this bullshit?
Yeah. Now, originally, well, not originally, but it starts with going to things during your lifetime that you can remember, like anything up to 5 years old.
Right.
So it'll start with maybe being like, an example of an auditing session would be, describe a moment where you were upset with somebody. And you would tell me about that time, who it was, what you were upset about, and whatever. And then once you finished talking about that incident, I'd say, all right, go back to the incident and give any additional data that you can contact. So we would do this over and over and over and over and over again until you had some kind of reaction of positivity, or just being like, oh my God, that was so stupid of me. Just kind of like that kind of thing. I'm not sure how to describe it, but it starts off as essentially Freudian regression therapy.
Right.
So it starts with incidents that you can remember, and then they'll just be like, all right, now that we're finished with that, are there any earlier incidents that are similar to that? What he'd call them earlier similars. So you'll just keep going back and back and back on what's called the time track, which is the moment you were supposedly either conceived or born to the present. And you would go back to these events on the time track until you got to the furthest one back related to those incidents.
Right. So is this sort of the starting off process of getting into Scientology? This is the starting process of Dianetics. The starting process of Scientology tends to begin with very common sense principles. So it might be that your marriage is failing and then you go see a marriage counselor, or you want some drug rehabilitation program. If you're on, like, I don't know, cocaine, ecstasy, whatever, and you want to try to get rid of that, you're going to hop onto what's called the Purification Rundown. Yeah. You go through these basic services, these cheap services. You might go through a communications course and learn how to just talk to people, make eye contact when you're speaking. And then once they pull you in and say, all right, you got so much out of that $50 course, here's the next course. It's $100. Yes. So
the Dianetics, more likely to just hop in and keep going.
The Dianetics is the fundamental principles of Scientology, but Scientology itself is sort of not a different entity, but a different thing, but connected to the Dianetics. It's like the Dianetics is the Bible, sort of. Is that the right way of putting it? And then Scientology is the way of living.
I wouldn't necessarily call it their Bible. They don't, it's not like they worship it. They don't do stuff like that, but it's used a lot in their practices, considering that is the basis of almost the entirety of Scientology auditing.
Yeah. So just if you know the question, because I know there's a lot to do, you seem to know your stuff when it comes to Scientology here, but just so we don't get too ahead of ourselves, the auditing part, that's absolutely fascinating. But do you know about the time frame that L. Ron Hubbard sort of started this? Because I know that he wrote books, and the man never had a second draft. And he never had a second draft in his life. He just wrote down what was in his brain, and then that was it. He just published it, and then that was it. But what was the year he started Scientology? Do you know that?
Scientology as a religion, I believe, was started in 52. Dianetics started in 50. Yeah. He had Dianetics centers and stuff like that, Dianetic research centers. And once Dianetics went bankrupt, I believe someone else bought the rights to Dianetics, and then eventually he created the Church of Scientology, so it wouldn't be counted as practicing medicine without a license, because in Dianetics, he would talk about how he could cure asthma, cancer, all these illnesses, diabetes, whatever. And obviously you can't make major health claims like that nowadays.
You know, of course. So there, you've got the starting picture there. You've got this guy, 1952. He's around about that time. He's got this thing, Dianetics. It's trying to help people. All these wild claims, a lot of psychology based, a lot of pseudo sort of psychology in this here, things that can't be proven. But he's sort of this person who can help everybody, like this great self-help book, that the same self-help book that's always written, that everybody reads, you know, online. But then he realizes, well, hold on, I have to pay taxes. I can't come out with these claims. But if I create a religion-based type thing, hence the Scientology, then I don't have to go through the same avenues as others. Is that correct in saying?
Scientology never gained tax exemption until 1993. So about 7 years after Hubbard died. So he wasn't focused on not paying. I don't think he was as focused on not paying taxes as David Miscavige was once he took over. Okay. So it was more just about, I guess, trying to quote unquote help people.
So just help people. And do you believe, in your opinion, that that's what he really wanted to do and he really believed? Or do you think he had other ideas in his head?
That's tough to say, considering in the beginning, I think he did want to help people. He did submit the proposal for Dianetics and auditing, well, the early versions of Dianetics and auditing to the American Psychiatric Association, something like that. They basically laughed in his face.
Yeah, obviously, yes.
So I think he did see some form of help in that.
Right.
Okay. Which led him to keep going.
And maybe to a certain degree, if somebody laughs in your face with a project or your life that you've put, pardon me, that could actually come into, that could make somebody very resentful and very angry. And they would just, you know, if you have maybe a narcissistic personality or a sociopathic personality, that could maybe lead you down the route with, do you know what? I'm just going to pursue this anyway because I'm right and everybody else is wrong. So we've talked about sort of where, you know, he comes out with the Dianetics roughly around about the 1952 period, and
1950, sorry,
1950s, around about that period, 1950 and stuff. So we're thinking to ourselves here, right? So he's got all the Dianetics. At what time frame then? Because we're going to go back into the Dianetics, because we will be talking about the fundamentals of that. If you want to speak about that. But at what time frame then, when does he sell or does he sell that sort of idea to the other person or the company that bought it? Do you know?
I can't say I know the time frame of the selling all I can say is I believe
sold
I
it.
can.
No,
Yeah,
no, it's fine.
He had to
It's
sell
fine.
it obviously once it went once the group went bankrupt.
So he goes bankrupt then, and he then, because in my opinion, I thought that he started Scientology because he went bankrupt, and he said to himself, well, I'm not going to go bankrupt, and the only way I can never go bankrupt again is if I become a religion. Do you know what I mean? But what you said is, but what you said there is, it was 7 years after he died, actually, whenever or sorry, 7 years before he died, was it? Or
7 years after he died, 1993.
So he never had any of those tax exemptions. And
nope.
so there's one motive away. It was only your guy Miscavige, and we'll get to that later on. So, well, let's move a wee bit further. So now we'll go back into the Dianetics of this here. So you were talking about the auditing process where basically they talk about if you had a problem with somebody, let's get to the root cause of it. Let's look inwards and stuff like that. And let's think about, we've got tactics to look back from whenever you were a little baby, which is, it's just not possible unless you're severely gifted. They're selling these types of things. It's like a self-help. Let's look inward. They're trying to sell a idea. Now, is this before Scientology that they're still doing this, or is Scientology established then?
I'm sorry, you're gonna have to repeat that.
So basically,
condense that question.
Was there a period of where the Dianetics thing?
Dianetics.
Sorry, the Dianetics thing was an entity by itself without the Scientology name above it.
Yes.
And then Scientology came in at a later date.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I mean. When did the Dianetics sort of come into the Scientology side of things then?
Dianetics, like I said, was first published in 1950.
Yes.
So, and then Scientology was established in 1952, and they kept Dianetics as part of it.
Right. Okay. So that's so they're very close together then.
Yes.
Yes. I'm just, because myself, I'm trying to really paint a picture on my brain here, and for the viewers, so they sort of understand, because a lot of people talk about Scientology, but they never really talk about the timeline. They always talk about the negatives and the positives and what they've done in their life experiences. But let's actually figure out a clue here. Let's actually do some research ourselves. Do you know what I mean? What's the timeline of Scientology? So do you want to explain there more about the Dianetics then of so we've established that it's, you're thinking about whenever you're a baby and how to help yourself when you're having arguments with people. Is there any more description of the Dianetics?
That's the basic principle of it, is the whole going back on your time track and finding the incidents. Dianetics does describe, the book Dianetics, which is, the full title is Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health. Talks about how the psychiatric profession at that time was so gruesome with the prefrontal lobotomies, electric shock therapy, that this was supposed to be a more humane and effective way of helping people deal with these illnesses. Right.
I get you. So they're going to, and that's that's in the 50s period. They're producing these, and they're trying to say, well, instead of doing this electric shock therapy and these lobotomies and whatever they're doing, well, why don't you go down this route? We have the answer. We can help you with this here. But as you said, it was sort of laughed out of the room of just complete pseudo psychology. Yeah, that must have been very hard for him to take.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's because of Hubbard. I'm going to have to go back a little bit on this. Because of Hubbard's tendency to lie about a good chunk of his life and the events that happened in it, he said that he first established the basic principles of Dianetics when he was in, I want to say it was like a military infirmary with blindness and some abdominal issue.
Right.
And he said he cured himself of these conditions with Dianetics, even though, I mean, it was mainly pink eye and ulcers.
Yeah, so basically, I can see what you're saying there. So basically, he's using himself as an example of how this is working. So
Yep.
this is working because look, I healed myself. I wouldn't be here if I hadn't have used this tool of Dianetics. Look, I am
I'm a product of the product.
exactly. Do you know what I mean? That's a very good way of putting it. So right, that is sort of the basics of where, and he was an author too. He wrote a lot of books. Is now were his books very much encoded with the Dianetics? Were they the Dianetics, or was that a separate thing?
I would say a good chunk of his books, only the one or maybe a few books was about Dianetics. The others were about other concepts, such as what he called the ARC triangle, which was affinity, reality, and communication. It had to do with obviously communicating with people, because if you don't have a liking for the person and you don't agree on what reality is, how the hell can you communicate with them? They contained a lot of other principles other than the Dianetics.
Yeah, the man, he wrote a lot of books. As I say, he never had a second draft in his life. He just literally wrote down what was in his head and published it. Yeah. He was a very good writer, though. We'll not take that away from him. He was a very good writer.
No, he was. He had great books, and especially some of his science fiction, Battlefield Earth, and his horror books. Fear, I think, was one of them.
Yeah,
I was really popular.
I haven't had the privilege of reading them, but you know what? I might actually give them a read. And you never know, Holly. I might become a Scientologist after this year, and I'll just delete this, or I don't know. As I say, I hear a lot of them are they sort of stalk people that leave Scientology.
It depends on how high ranking you are in Scientology. If you're an ex-Sea Org member, like Mike Rinder was, like Mark Headley was, all that stuff, or you're a high profile celebrity like Leah Remini, or Paul Haggis, the guy who created Scientology Going Clear in the Prison of Belief. I'm trying to remember if he wrote the book or directed the movie.
Yeah.
But oh yeah, he wrote the movie. But if you're either like creating some kind of expose, or you're just trying to expose the church, and you were a high ranking person, whether you were high on the OT levels or whatnot, then you're more likely to be targeted as compared to people like us who were never in. So we're not even on their radar yet.
Yeah.
And yeah, if we didn't really contribute much, then the likelihood of us getting stalked, harassed by OSA is very, very low, very, very low.
Well, it sort of seems to be because maybe in that sort of sense, and that's going off the topic of what we're talking about here. I sort of wanted to talk about that a wee bit later on, and that was myself. I brought that up. I find it very hard to bring up the juicy details. Do you know what I mean? It's very hard not to bring those details up.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
But in a sense, you can see why that is. Why would we be a target if we're exposing anything here? The only people who have any credit to expose anything are the people that were actually in it, because they will seem more of a truth, of a reality of what's actually went on here. Where me, Ronan, you, Holly, we could just be talking absolute garbage.
Yeah, exactly. We're just called people who don't know anything.
Yes, yes. And if any of those people in Scientology maybe get access to a device and see us talking, it's not really going to mean anything. We'll just look like people that are just talking bad about Scientology.
We're giving out what's called black PR, according to Scientology.
Black PR, that's a good one. That's a really
There's
good
a lot of terminology to go through.
Yeah, there really is. It's a crazy one this year. So, without going off the topic again, I apologize, Holly.
It's okay.
So we understand the Dianetics of this here now. We understand that it was around about 1950. We understand that he was a great author, but he never had a second draft. We understand that maybe he took it very hard that his work was seen as pseudo-psychology. Well, in my opinion, maybe he didn't care, but in my opinion, the man maybe had suffered from a bit of narcissism, he was a bit of a sociopath. So he took that very hard, like anybody else would. And now we're moving on. So we're maybe, let's say, where do you think we should move on to after that? Maybe where was Scientology roughly in the 1980s, say?
In 1980s, I would say, I think they had,
or even 1990s. Where do you think we should move on to in regards to what should be talked about in Scientology? Because I just wanted to get the basics there, but I'm thinking, where should we talk now? Should we go straight into the process of joining Scientology?
We could go into the bridge to total freedom.
Yes, let's talk about that. Yep, definitely.
So if I could, let me see if I can.
Yeah, that's fine. You get
share the screen, because I'm gonna try to load up a picture of the bridge. See if we can get a good image of it.
I can put so I can do this, and then you'll be able to share the screen if you need be.
All right. Let me see if I can. Oh, all right, perfect. It's zoomed into hell, because it's a huge, absolutely huge poster. All right, so if I click share, we'll minimize that, maximize this.
It should share. I think it should share anyway.
Yep, I just didn't want to hit share screen, because then it was going to share the video of us talking. So I just have to minimize that quick.
Yeah.
Share screen. And oh, we could, oh, perfect, the window. That's awesome. All right, share. So if you can see a bunch of red text, let me know.
Yeah, I've just put it to the stream.
All right, cool. So this entire thing is the bridge to total freedom, or obviously, as you can see, the Scientology classification, gradation, and awareness chart of levels and certificates.
Mm-hmm.
The left side of this is what you would do if you want to be an auditor. The right side is if you want to be a parishioner, if you want to be someone like Leah Remini who goes up the bridge. You don't want to help people, you want to help yourself. Right.
Is that actually the way they would speak about that? They would say, you know, what way would they present this to, if, for instance, I know you haven't been a Scientologist, but do you think that they would present it that way, or would they present it in a different way? Like, obviously I'm choosing the right side if I want to be a Scientologist.
Mm-hmm. I want to say that they would go roughly around that way by saying on the left is your auditing and your training.
Yeah.
Learning how to be maybe a case supervisor, someone who overlooks auditors and their what they call pre-clears. Now I have to explain a pre-clear. A pre-clear is someone going through Scientology. I don't know if you can see my mouse moving at all.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Okay. So right here, I'm circling around this big word clear.
Yeah.
That is the state where your reactive mind is totally erased of all engrams. You have nothing but this analytical mind, this perfect computer. Mm-hmm. And after that, you can start beginning the really, really juicy stuff, the OT levels.
Wow.
A pre-clear obviously would be someone who hasn't attained the state of clear yet. So that could be anything from Purification Rundown, which I mentioned earlier, up to New Era Dianetics or grade 4.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, people still tend to use the word pre-clear. It's just a generic term, but you might use pre-OT if someone is getting their way through the OT levels. Now, currently, the poster shows up to OT 15. Nothing has been written past OT 8.
Right. And just to get a clear picture of this here, so if you can you scroll back down to the bottom again for me, please? Thank you. So everybody starts at the bottom.
Yes, everyone starts at the bottom. You may start through one of these introductory services, which are those cheap courses: communication, life improvement, Dianetics book 1, purification route, way to happiness, which are just some basic common sense principles like I don't know, respect your parents, keep good hygiene. It's stuff that not really anyone's going to have a problem with.
Wow. So they sort of have masked this crazy pyramid with a lovely little thing for if you're going up with your parents and a Scientologist. I could just imagine this. It's the 1970s and you're with your mom and you're maybe acting up with your mom, and your mom, just this lovely Scientologist person, comes up to you and says, look, you know, respect your mother. This is our new religion. But really, they're just saying that to sort of entice you into this pyramid of craziness. Well, it seems. Would I be? Is that a correct way of putting that? Like it's just the bottom part here. Which we're looking at. It says Dianetics and Scientology. Before you even reach any part of the graph or the grid, this is the sort of introduction to Scientology. And once you get by this, then you can actually just see there it says not classed. So you're not even classed as anything once you join.
Yeah.
You're just you're just an expendable basically to these people.
I don't think it's that you're expendable. It's just that you haven't gotten through all the basics to even call yourself, at least on this side, you haven't gotten through the basics to call yourself an auditor.
Right. Okay. And so the left-hand side, this is the auditing sort of type branch that you if you want to go into the auditing side of things. Now, on the right-hand side, what is the difference between the right and the left?
The left is basically, think about it like this. The left is if you want to help people. The right is if you want to be helped.
So for instance, basically, I don't know what way I want to say this. Maybe I could be wrong in saying this, but one side's for a narcissist and one side's for an absolutely nice person.
I wouldn't say no, not for a narcissist. The left side, if you want to be an auditor, think about it as being a therapist or a counselor.
Right. Okay.
So it'd be like you'd go up the left side if you want to be a counselor. And if you're going on the right side, you're the one getting the counseling. And
which one do you get paid for any of this?
You get paid. You don't get paid, obviously, if you're going to be the one getting the counseling. You have to pay for that.
Right. Yes,
but
I get you.
Auditors, if you're working at a science, now this is a whole other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Scientology buildings are not called churches. Scientologists do not call them churches. They will never call them churches unless they're trying to provide a certain image to the public by showing, hey, we're a religion, come to our church.
Right. Okay.
Within Scientology, they're called orgs, which is short for organization.
Orgs. So we sort of, when we're talking about a Scientology church, we call them an org.
Yep, we call it an org. So there are two types of orgs, and there's also something called a mission. I'll go through the orgs first. A class 5 org is anything that can get you trained up to the level of class 5.
Right.
And it can get you up to the level of clear.
Okay.
After that, you have your advanced organizations or your Sea Org organizations, because the only people that work there are Sea Org members.
Mm-hmm.
You need to sign that billion-year contract in order to be able to work at these organizations to start going from the Sunshine Rundown up through the OT levels.
Just to run through that. So for the viewers that don't know, but when you sign a contract for Scientology, you're signing, is it your soul for 1 billion years?
Yes, Scientologists believe in reincarnation. They believe that your soul has been through hundreds or millions of lifetimes before. You're not your soul. Your Thetan. You're Thetan. Everybody's a Thetan. You're a Thetan. I'm a Thetan. Your dog's a Thetan. Your cat's a Thetan.
Mm-hmm.
We, according to them, we are not our bodies. We are the things controlling the meat bodies.
Yeah, it's I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm definitely not saying they're wrong, because nobody actually knows the full truth to that. But I'm just thinking here. So you've got a very complicated system here. Now, for you to move up the ranks on any of these, I was told the fundamental thing that you need is cash.
Oh, big time.
Right. Now, does that differ by either the right side or the left side of this graph that you're showing me, or is it just regardless of where you are in this graph, if you have cash, you can move up the ranks fast? You're
going to need cash both sides, but the amounts are obviously going to differ. Mm-hmm. If you're going to be an auditor, you need to pay for the courses that you're going to take and the training. But if you're going to be pre-clear, you're going to be paying by what are called intensives, which are blocks of auditing time. You're going to pay for 12 and a half hours. That is an intensive. You're going to pay a certain amount for that intensive.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to break down the psychology of this, Holly. And it's a very hard one. And you know what? I was always taught, see, if something's very complicated, it's probably bullshit, unless it's quantum physics. But even then, this actually seems more complicated than quantum physics. Now, what I'm going to say is, and just my personal opinion, because this is real fascinating stuff, and I hope the viewers, anybody watching this here, actually finds this interesting. I find this really, really fascinating, that what I'm actually witnessing here is basically a pyramid system. That's what it is. It's a pyramid system. And, you know, if you look at the top of that, what's the likelihood of a person going from the bottom to the top? How long would that take a person to get to the top of that pyramid?
Jeez,
or I'll reword this here. Could a person with no cash become a Scientologist and get to the top within 20 years?
No.
Right.
Absolutely not.
So that's just a no. Then it would be no. So if I joined Scientology now, and I put all the labor in, all the hard work in, became a devoted Scientologist, promoted Scientology, I couldn't get to the top of the Scientology pyramid ever. You
can get to the top of the rankings of Scientology, which, remember, as I said, is OT8. That's if you want to be up. That's if you want to get the auditing, and obviously, if you want to get the counseling, you can go up to class 12. The only ways that you can get free services are if you work for the church.
Right.
You either are going to be a staff member at an org, at a class 5 org or a mission. You're going to sign a contract for either 2.5 or 5 years. Or you're going to join the C organization, which obviously for the contract is the rest of your life.
Right. And maybe that leads us on to something else then, because is there anything else you want to talk about in this graph before I move on to, is there anything else that we should know about this graph?
I mean, we could go have an entire podcast just about this graph alone.
Well, do you know what we should do? Maybe we should actually come back sometime, right? For part 2 and actually just have it about this graph.
All right. I'll bookmark that right now.
That would be amazing. So because it does seem like a very complicated graph. So what I'll do is, what we could talk about now is and that was very interesting, Holly. Thank you for bringing up that graph. And it was actually quite an eye opener to see that in front of my face, that all the different little boxes, and all those little boxes are a rank, and within each rank there's lots of people. And then you look up and I see that box that says clear, and you just think to yourself, once you get to that box that says clear, what does that actually mean? Could you explain that to us?
Sorry, just give me 1 second. I'm just
no, you're fine. Take your time.
Finding my fiance to give my dog some food.
No, you're fine. You take your time.
All right. So
this is a relaxed podcast, Holly. We do.
I'm just glad it's recorded.
Yeah.
So when you get to clear, like I said, that going back to Dianetics, that's when you are done with your reactive mind. You only have your analytical mind left over, which obviously that can't happen. New stuff is going to be happening to you every day that you're going to feel like you need to get auditing for.
Yeah.
And some people actually it's kind of a high, because when you go into your auditing session and you cover these traumatic incidents, you come out feeling lighter. You feel like your burden's been lifted off your shoulders. You come out with a little bit of maybe a pep in your step. People can get addicted to that. They'll be like, "Oh, something bad's going on today. I need to go get auditing."
Of course, yeah.
And then obviously, the more auditing you get, the more intensives you pay for.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, like, so you've just joined. You're a person. Your life hasn't maybe went the best, and I'm a new person, and we've just joined I've just been hooked into the Scientology. I've just got the leaflet through the door. I've just spoke to somebody in Scientology. Now I've joined. I have no money. What happens to me whenever I become that first day of Scientology? What happens to me? How does that work? Do you know?
The Oxford Capacity Analysis Test.
Right.
The OCA has nothing to do with Oxford and University. The moment you step through that organization door, they are going to give you a list of 200 yes, no, maybe questions to fill out. Now, back a few years ago, me and a friend actually went to a local organization just to do this. So I have my OCA results. Pardon me for all the moving around in the chair.
Wow. So you actually went in and tested this out?
Actually, if you don't mind, would you mind holding until I see if I can find my results?
No, here, listen. You take your time. This is fascinating stuff. This is what we have, ladies and gentlemen. A person who went to the depths of hell in Scientology to see what the Scientologist would say about her, and she's going to get her results. This is fascinating stuff, guys. I don't know if you are thinking the same thing as me, but the Scientology here, it's like for people that maybe have nothing, and these people suck them in just to use them as labor. And if you have money, then you could be sort of put on a pedestal like John Travolta or Tom Cruise, and people think that you're a god. So it's absolutely crazy, guys, but we haven't got to that part yet about Tom Cruise. And
sorry, just feeding my dogs. I'll be back in a bit.
Yeah, no, you're fine. You take your time. But guys, it is a crazy thing, Scientology, and L. Ron Hubbard started this to basically to become this god, this everlasting figure, this god, and in some senses he did. But don't be fooled by the craziness, because whenever they say they have 20 million people around the world that are involved with this religion, it's not. It's more like 20,000. It's all about perception. And it's all about small man syndrome too.
He's all good. What? Babe, I'm still on the podcast. Ha! I do. It's okay. Sorry.
No, listen. This is what it's all about. This is what Holly. This is what it's all about. This is what reality is. This isn't staged. There's nothing set up. This isn't one of these talk shows. So here we go. We'll have it, guys. I'm going to put you full screen here.
All right, cool.
Oh,
good. It doesn't even have to be reversed. Perfect. So these are my results from the Oxford Capacity Analysis. Like I said, 200 yes, no, maybe questions, asking things like, I can actually pull up the test online. By the way, this has, like I said, nothing to do with Oxford University at all. I think they just put it there just to make it look sophisticated.
No, 100%, Holly. It's what it is. It's I can see the psychology based the Scientology here. Every word means something. There's all these big words that are put into something that describes something very simple. They could have just narrowed Scientology down to maybe a paragraph, but they decided to make 20 books from it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's not as complicated as what it seems, but I think that's the idea of Scientology.
Oh, yeah. So, by the way, I was also told, because of my results.
Yes, yeah, so read. No, you're fine. You're fine.
Yeah, what's up? Hey, I'm in the middle of the podcast. Mom, I'm in the middle of the podcast right now. I gotta go. Bye.
Do you know what, Holly? This is great because I'll be doing like a selection of like funny edits
That's
like
okay. I'm okay with that. That's awesome.
funny things. So I love all this here too. Like, but this is the reality. This is just two people talking. It's a podcast. It's not, there's no pressure. No, there's no pressure. You can do your dishes. You can make your dinner. It doesn't make a difference.
All right. So I went in under the name Mark Jameson. Now, mind you, I'll go into this just for backstory.
Yeah.
I came out as trans about January of 19, I want to say. So my name used to be John, but
Right.
I legally changed it over to Holly like about a month ago. So, and I've been
Wow.
on hormones for about 2.5 years. So this is back when I presented as male. I went by the name of Mark Jameson.
Right.
And I went with my friend, I'll give her initials, KB.
Okay.
Just for privacy reasons.
Just on a side note, I had no idea.
Thank you.
That
means a lot.
Idea. I generally, now, I mean, I would tell you the truth. I had zero idea, and I don't want to emphasize that either because I don't want to, put you on the spot there, but I generally had no clue.
Awesome. That means a lot. I guess the hormones are doing their job.
Maybe, sorry, Holly, maybe, in another time, if you want to come on the podcast and tell your story about that, because that's
sure.
That's quite an inspirational story, Now, listen, on a side note to that there, this is a podcast. We can talk about whatever we want. I feel like everybody should be able to be who they are. I feel that if, they're in a lot of cases, people are trapped in the wrong body and they need to just become who they are. But on a side note to that, over here, there's not a lot of like you wouldn't get a lot of people being homophobic over here or transphobic. So, the legislation of speech, should you say, isn't needed over here. Like to say, a person has to be called this, where you sort of get that then politics in America. So I do feel in a certain way that I'm looking at these American politicians and they're saying, no, this shouldn't be legislated. In your opinion, do you think, is there a lot of transphobic entities in America that you've witnessed, or was it a easy process for you to do?
For me, it was an easy process. I live in a very liberal democratic area, so many people were accepting. My entire family had absolutely no problems with this, which I consider myself pretty lucky for that, because I've heard of some people who get disowned by their parents and get kicked out, or they just go through this mental trauma that they can't be who they want to be.
Yeah, no, that seems, but I'm all for everybody being who they want to be, but where I sort of draw the line in things is the legislation of speech. I don't agree with any type of speech that should be banned, because I think, like, for instance, if somebody attacks you in any way, shape, or form, well, then people like myself should come forward and say, well, actually, no, that's wrong because of A, B, and C. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, because bad speech should always be countered with good speech, and good always beats evil, in my opinion.
Yep.
If that makes any sense, I know we've sort of deviated from the topic there.
That's okay.
But you've just hit me with a whammer there, because I had no clue. And I think, actually, if you ever want to tell your story, and you'd be more than welcome to do a separate one. It looks like we're doing a couple of them here. You're going to do one just about the sheet, about the paper, about the whole pyramid system of Scientology, and then you can do one yourself about your story or whatnot. I would be honored.
I was gonna say, if you wouldn't mind, I don't think my fiance would mind telling hers either.
Listen, both of you can come on at the same time. It would be absolutely phenomenal to hear that side, that the realities of what it's like to be a trans person, and actually give your view, because the media spins it. I don't listen to either right or left. I just see it as, well, there's crazy medias on both sides, and there's a lot of good people like yourself and myself stuck in the middle, and we're like, well, what is the actual truth here? Do you know what I mean? So come out, tell your story, and you'd be more than welcome to come on this podcast and at any time and tell your story.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that.
Yes, of course. Now, let's talk about. So, what was the results of your test then?
So, on the left side here, oh, let's see if damn freaking clarity.
No, it's okay.
So they have a scale of what's considered normal, unacceptable, and desirable.
Mm-hmm.
So this gray line,
Mm-hmm.
anything within the shaded area here is what's considered roughly normal, average for people. So as you can see, I was high in some aspects, low in some others.
Mm-hmm.
The lowest one happened to be anxiety.
Right.
I was nervous when I was talking to the people, but mind you, I knew that our test results were going to be discussed after the test was finished and processed. They weren't going to let us leave until they finished processing everything.
Are you hooked up to a machine then with your fingertips?
No, no, it was just them taking our answers to the questions and basically throwing them into a computer.
So yeah, so basically they took your answers, put them into a computer.
And it ranked the points in whatever way they do. Some questions rank higher than others. One example is question 4. So the first question, for example, is, do you make thoughtless remarks or accusations which you later regret? A lot of these questions apply to a lot of people. I know that one of the questions that we had, which I guess the church may not be doing this anymore, is, do you browse railway timetables or dictionaries for fun? That was one example of a question that we had to answer. I don't know how that calculates anything.
As an Irishman, I probably would have answered yes to that just for the pure fun of it.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, I would.
Sorry, continue. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. I was just saying, as an Irishman, I would have just said, yeah, I do it. That's actually, I can't believe I was asked that question, because that's what I was doing that just before I came in. just to throw them off. That's what I would have done.
That's not bad. Let me think. What the heck was I going to say? I don't know. Anyway. But yeah, like I said, I was really low in anxiety. The sections have to do with stability, happiness, how composed you are, your certainty in life, activity, your aggressiveness or passiveness, responsibility. What is it? I'm just looking at this now and I didn't even notice this. Correct estimation is on the high side, and then on the low side is critical.
Right. So is it the higher you are, the more things you have to work on, or
the lower you are, the more things you have to work on? Right.
So we'll just go through. So the low things that they said you had to work on, can you go through them just again? So, and
the results are actually written right here on the back.
Okay.
I was told to get a Dianetics and the Dianetics book and the DVD, which goes over the principles of Dianetics without you really having to read the book.
Right.
As well as I was given the recommendation for their success through communication course.
And how much does that cost?
That was one of the cheap courses. It should be around $50 to $100. That was going to be one of the introductory services that you saw at the bottom of the bridge that they would pull me in with.
And did they ask you what you worked as, what your income was? Did they ask you?
No. Nope.
Right. Okay.
To them, it doesn't necessarily matter if you're a Wall Street banker or whatnot. As long as you can get the money somehow, whether it be maxing out your credit cards, getting new credit cards, borrowing the money from friends and family, they don't care how you get the money as long as you get the money.
Right. But is the money emphasized?
Not in the beginning.
Not at the beginning. Right. It's just only when you take the next steps will money ever be brought up or emphasized.
Once you've become invested in it mentally and emotionally, then they start talking about how much stuff costs. And if you start talking about, oh, I can't afford this or I can't afford that, they're going to start saying, all right, here are some ways we can do this.
So that was the key that I was looking for, you see, because throughout this whole podcast, I was talking and I was thinking to myself, sorry, when you were talking, I was thinking to myself, there was, when's the money going to come into this? So what they actually do is, and it's a very good tactic, is they don't talk about the money in the introduction side of things. They get you so emotionally invested where money's not even a topic. But then whenever you take the next step, that's whenever you're so emotionally invested, currency and money doesn't matter to you. You'll just give your whole house and your whole life and max out all your credit cards just to be involved in this great organization that's going to enlighten me and bring me all the happiness and joy that I deserve.
Yeah, you're gonna see tons of gains and wins from these services.
Right. So yeah, so that was the introduction. That was your introduction to Scientology.
Yes.
So after that, what would be the next step then?
The next step would be obviously taking that communications course.
Okay, so you take the communications course, and do you know what the communications course consists of, or what you have to?
Want to say I can actually look that up right now. I may be mixing it up with the training routines, which is a different part of the bridge entirely.
It's okay though. I mean, it's all a sort of an introduction. It's all a very low part of Scientology itself. So, you know, the next step would either be, so it's a bridge, you call it like a bridge.
It is called the Bridge to Total Freedom.
The Bridge to Total Freedom.
Okay, so I've got it. I got it up. Success through communications course. It's many people's first introduction to the practices. It appears at the bottom of the chart. The course covers TR 0 through 4, training routine 0 through 4. Training routine 0 includes sitting in front of another person, maybe 3 or 4 feet away, eyes closed, just being there, knowing that they're there, and just confronting that, not moving, not flinching, not falling asleep. And this could be going on for hours cumulatively, not at a time.
So that's psychological torture then?
It can be for some people.
And that's a training routine they put you through?
That's a training routine. So you and I would sit across from each other if we were training together. We would just have our eyes closed and we would just confront the fact that we are there. It would be almost like, you can kind of think of it, I guess, as like a meditation type thing. Well, it's not like meditation. The whole point is not to lose yourself. The point is to confront the other person without actually seeing them. It's just knowing that they're there and being comfortable with the fact that they are there.
It's like meditation on steroids.
I guess. I mean, you're not really trying to look inward, but none of that stuff. And then after that is doing that same thing, but just having your eyes open, looking at the person, no flinching, no yawning, no falling asleep, no zoning out, staring into space. There's also one example. They repeat a question over and over, which is one person being like, do fish swim or do birds fly? And the point is to be able to get somebody to answer the question no matter what they say. So one example would be, you would ask me, do fish swim? And I might say, I don't care. Ask me something else. And you'll say, I'll repeat the auditing question. Do fish swim? And you'll just do that over and over and over and over and over again for hours.
You lose your brain. That's psychological.
They break you.
Torture.
This is how they freaking break you.
Yeah. No, that's psychological torture. That's how you break a person's consciousness. You know, sorry, go ahead. And
then there's bull baiting, which if you ever watch any of the trying to think of a good one, the BBC expose with John Sweeney. He's the BBC reporter who was working to expose Scientology. And he was being stalked and harassed by OSA because of this story. Mike Rinder at the time was still a member of the church, still a prominent Sea Org member, and he confronted John Sweeney on several occasions. And no matter what John Sweeney said, Mike just kept a straight face. It was a way to keep him composed. This is what you learn in TR0 bull bait. You will sit there. The other person will basically try to do everything they can to get you to react and to push your buttons.
Right.
This teaches you to be able to confront whatever they say without showing emotion, without reacting and stuff like that.
And is this like a thing that's taught at the higher levels, or is this taught also at the lower levels?
This is the communications course.
Right. Okay. So this guy, what was his name again that was confronted?
John Sweeney was the BBC reporter confronted by Mike Rinder.
And who was in Scientology? Was the BBC reporter a Scientologist?
Or no. Mike Rinder was the spokesman, the international spokesman for the church.
And he just kept a straight face.
he kept a straight face because there was a point where John Sweeney got extremely aggravated and wait a minute, that was either Mike Rinder or
I would
no. Either way, there was someone in the Sea Org member, a high ranking Sea Org member that John Sweeney eventually snapped and started screaming at him. And the guy kept a straight face.
There was a snapping point then with one of these guys.
Yeah, it was Tommy Davis.
That wasn't a very sort of, you know, with the grain of Scientology. It seems to me they teach to never do that, but this guy snapped.
Well, now mind you, John Sweeney wasn't a Scientologist. He was just a reporter trying to expose them. Yeah. So he hadn't gone through the bull baiting and all the communication stuff. So he still had those reactions. He wasn't able to keep them suppressed. He was reacting on an emotional level.
Oh, sorry. Yes, now I get you. Did he join Scientology to sort of infiltrate them?
No, he never joined. He was purely a reporter investigating what people had told him, what people had shared. And like, for example, does David Miscavige beat his staff?
Right. I get
He's trying to expose the abuses.
Yeah, you know, I totally, yeah. Listen, just on a side note, I haven't watched the BBC in about 10 years. So I probably, if that documentary came out, I probably missed it. You know, the BBC are just, I could do a podcast on that myself of what they're like. They're just a terrible, terrible, terrible news company. Over here, we have to pay like a TV license because of the BBC. They refuse to advertise, and because of that, everybody has to pay a TV license, regardless if you watch the BBC or not.
That's really weird. We just pay cable bills.
It's the BBC. It's very ironic that the BBC would be sort of trying to investigate Scientology when they themselves steal people's money and give them nothing in return. So it's the irony in that sort of for me is great. It's actually fascinating, and it's comedic too. But without going into another mad subject there. So so now we've got up to the point where, you know, you're going through all these psychological tests to sort of to strengthen your mind and to find out who you are or what you are. Now, just a question for you. At what point do they start to tell you that your arm is another person and that your ear is another person?
The body thetans. Okay, so we're getting to the juicy stuff. OT3, operating thetan level 3.
Right.
First question, have you watched South Park?
Are you serious?
Yes, I am dead serious. Do you watch the show South Park?
Yeah, I watch it all the time.
Have you seen the episode called Trapped in the Closet with Tom Cruise and all that stuff?
No, I didn't know.
Okay, so there was an episode in, I want to say it was like season 8 or something like that, where it was about Scientology. They blatantly made fun of Scientology. But they did it in such a way that they could be dismissed as not knowing anything, because they didn't talk about any of the introductory services. They went straight to the OT3 narratives.
Right. Yes, they didn't. Yeah, I get that.
They pulled I think the story was Stan wanted something to do because he didn't have any money. And so they said, hey, come on in and take a free personality test. That's what they call that OCA thing. So the way they did it didn't accurately portray it. There was no circling questions on like a bubble sheet or anything like that. They had him hooked up to this device, the e-meter.
Is that what that is?
That is legitimately, it's an outdated model according to the church.
Show us. Oh, you've muted. You've muted.
Yeah, my mic just got unplugged.
That's fine. Is that your dog?
Yeah, I think his leg is still hurting.
Oh God, is he okay?
He seems okay, but he was hurting a little, maybe a few days ago. Tracker, you got to get down.
No, he's fine.
Yeah.
He just wants some of the fame too. Get him in.
He had an incident in the yard when we were playing fetch with him, and we think he hurt his paw. Somehow he might have twisted it or did it some way that it shouldn't have been. Now he's just kind of been hurting, and we've been trying to keep him off his feet for a few days.
God love him. He's okay. He's
Hi, buddy. This is Tracker. So
hello, Tracker.
But either way, this is a Mark 7 e-meter that I purchased off of eBay.
Wow, how much did that cost?
This cost me about. Hold on 1 second. Could you guys please talk in the other room? I don't want the sound coming in through the microphone. It cost me, I'm going to hate to say this, it cost me about $300.
Wow. And does it work? What does it do?
It's hooked up to these two metal cans, which are just called the cans. It's essentially two electrodes that the pre-clear holds on to.
Yeah.
The auditor is the only one. Tracker down.
Tracker wants that used.
And he's shaking. I think he's still hurting because he's shaking way too much right now. Tracker
works for Scientology.
Yeah, he works for OSA.
Yeah.
But the auditor is the only person that can see the needle and all these dials and stuff. The person on the other side only sees the back of it.
And what does the machine read?
The machine reads a very, very mild electric current that runs through the wires, through the cans, and through the person's body. It's an electric current. Hi, Mom. It's an electric current that a person can't feel because it's so low.
Okay.
So you don't have to worry about getting electrocuted or anything like that when you're doing this. You can't feel it at all. I hope this still works. I hope the battery's still good.
Guys, hopefully Holly does not fry herself. On the
podcast.
L.
Ron Hubbard tried to do it at one point, so
yeah,
I could go on about his suicide attempt.
So I'm just thinking. So if it shoots something out like a small electric current, what can it read back?
It just reads back the resistance on that current.
Right. Okay. Yes, I understand.
It's basically I don't even know what you'd call it. Yeah, basically an electric resistance tester.
So, Anya, because our bodies are all made up differently in a certain degree.
You have to get out from under the computer desk.
I'm telling you, he works for Scientology. That's what he's doing.
If he's got a wire, then
he's Sea Orc.
I swear to God.
Sea Orc. He's there. He knows what he's doing.
He hasn't been the first Sea Orc dog.
Yeah. Are you serious?
There were, I believe it was a corgi that they had on the Apollo, which was the ship that L. Ron Hubbard was running back in the 60s.
What? He was trying to be like the Queen then, was he?
He wasn't get out of the trash can. I'm sure this will make great bloopers.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm keeping it all in. This is what.
You gotta go that way. Hang on. I'm just gonna try to get him out of here.
No, it's fine. You take your time.
I'm just trying to get him out of there.
So, guys, we have a machine that Holly had bought for $300 off eBay that's used by Scientologists to read some crazy waves that come out of your body. Tell me in the comments, is Scientology a absolute crazy religion, or is it legitimate? You give me your opinion. But some very insightful stuff from Holly tonight, and I cannot believe she's actually got a machine.
Sorry about that. Anyway,
they use in Scientology.
All right, so yeah, like I said, electric current goes through the cans, which the pre-clear is holding.
Yeah.
There are different ways that the needle can be read. So, for example, if it goes sharply to one side, I believe that's called a rock slam, and that indicates evil hidden intentions. So that can be used in what's called a security check. So like, do you have anything against David Miscavige, L. Ron Hubbard, or something like that?
So are you telling me that people could have been victimized or actually maybe even beaten or even just degraded because this bullshit machine that the Scientologists use could have just rock bottomed, as you say, or whatever you call it?
Rock slammed
to one side because of, for any reason other than they had evil intentions.
If you were a Sea Org member and you were hooked up to this device in a security check and you rock slammed against what's called list 1, if you were an L1RSer, that meant you had hidden evil intentions against David Miscavige, against Scientology, against L. Ron Hubbard, Mary Sue, whoever. Now, mind you, you're a Sea Org member. You are one of the most dedicated Scientologists in the world, working 24/7, 365 for a maximum of $50 a week.
What?
Okay, we didn't get into the payment structure.
Are you serious?
Mike Rinder, the guy, or Tommy Davis, whoever it was, any Sea Org member or staff member gets paid a maximum of $50 a week because they are religious volunteers according to their contracts.
I don't know whether...
Get off the trash can. Oh my God.
I don't know whether to respect the hustle, right?
Yeah.
Or be like totally shocked that anybody would fall for that.
Well, I mean, when you're so invested and you're like, I want to help, they call it clear the planet. They want to get people to the state of clear. They believe that by getting them to the state of clear, they can get rid of war, misery, all the bad things that are hurting this world.
Yeah.
They believe that if they clear the planet, then they can have a more peaceful place.
Right. So
that's part of the motivation.
So what determines how far you go up the ranks in Scientology? We'll just take away the auditor versus, what's the other one called?
Pre-clear.
The pre-clear. We'll take away that for a second because I think some of the viewers might find that a wee bit complicated to understand. I'm not saying that they're stupid, but sometimes if you're not into Scientology, you might look at that and go, well, is it two separate things? Let's try to simplify it and bring it all into a one thing. So if you want to move up the ranks, you've just came through the door, you're hooked, you've maxed out your credit cards, you've got all this money, you've sold your house, you're now a full-fledged member of Scientology. How then now does it determine whether how much money you have to move up the ranks, or can you move up the ranks without any money?
If you're maxing out your credit cards and selling and getting like a second mortgage on your house, refinancing, doing all that stuff, and you're working your way up there, they're still going to ask you for more.
Right. And so
you cannot do Scientology services unless you work for the church. You cannot do Scientology services without paying.
Right. So the whole system is structured with how much wealth you have.
Essentially.
But at the same time, they're talking about enlightening yourself and basically not having that bitterness inside you against others, not having this negative energy. But at the same time, the hypocrisy in all of this here is we will not eradicate this from your life unless you give us money, currency.
Yeah. Like you said, the Scientologist thinks, no, it doesn't matter how much money I spend if I am becoming a better person in the process and if I am helping others.
And I think maybe the good reply to that would be is, well, if you're telling me it doesn't matter how much money I spend, then why are you not giving this away for free?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. The point is,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, the point. Well, their idea is, yeah, it doesn't matter how much money you spend, so give us more of it.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where maybe it takes there's a lot of people that are suffering in the world. There's a lot of people that have felt low in their life. I'm not against religion. I'm not for religion. I believe anybody can believe in what they want. But if you look at, let's look at Catholicism. Let's look at the Catholic structure. You're not forced to pay money. You just donate whatever you can, whether it be 20 cents, 20p, or £1 million, $1 million. It's up to yourself, and everybody's welcome. regardless of the ins and outs of Catholicism or whether you're a Protestant Catholic, most religions, you don't actually have to pay to be involved. But with Scientology, it seems like the more wealth you have, the more you go up the ranks and the higher you get. And that leads us on to another subject. So let's talk about, if you don't mind, if you've got enough time.
I've got about another half hour or so.
Okay, so let's move into the other section of Scientology. So we've covered the basics. We've covered sort of the introduction, and regardless, it actually depends on your wealth to move up the system. The Dianetics of it, the sort of fundamentals of what Scientology is. We've covered all that. Now let's talk about celebrities and Scientology. Where the hell does Tom Cruise and John Travolta come into this conversation?
So originally, back when Hubbard was still alive, there actually was a policy that he wrote called John Travolta. And it was about who was allowed to deal and handle with John Travolta.
Right.
They believed that celebrities are basically high-level influencers. If a celebrity can say, I joined this group, obviously a whole bunch of their followers are going to say, oh, this guy's a part of it. Maybe there's something good here. I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, so they're sort of put on a pedestal in the sense that, look at these guys, these, and I'm just going to say it, John Travolta, his career was absolutely dog shit. It was going downhill until he joined Scientology, and for some strange reason, it picked up again. Maybe there was something to the Scientology. Maybe he was enlightened. But then you look at Tom Cruise. He's one of the best actors in the world. Does his own stunts, but the man is the height of a 4-year-old boy. He's a very small little man.
Well, I was going to say Tom Cruise is what, 5 something, 5'4", 5'5", something like that.
He's a tiny, titchy little man that wears this massive gold medallion, thinking that he's something from Masters of the Universe.
Oh, great. All right. So now we're going into the Freedom Medal of Valor.
Yeah.
He was awarded that by, I believe it was by the International Association of Scientologists.
And he stood on stage, and his all 5 foot of himself, all the 4-year-old boy that is Tom Cruise, was standing there with a medal half the size of his body. And I thought, wow, I couldn't imagine one of my heroes, Tom Cruise. I loved him in The Color of Money back in the day with Paul Newman, one of the most brilliant movies that's been ever made. This guy who has everything still had to join Scientology to get that extra ego boost that he is the ruler of the universe.
I mean, yeah, pretty much. I think that either way, even when he was first joining Scientology, or even before that, I think he was getting into movies. So I think he was bound at some point to at least become a bit more successful, whether or not he had joined Scientology. Granted, the courses that he took may have helped.
Yeah.
Those beginner courses or any of the counseling that he got may have helped him, may have helped boost his self-confidence.
Now, how are the lower sort of ranked people in Scientology, how do they see the celebrities in this, like the higher ones? Well, actually, don't answer that question. I'll answer that question after, but how high up is John Travolta and Tom Cruise?
I want to say John Travolta's OT6, and I think Tom Cruise is OT7.
So, and it goes as far as OT8?
Yes.
So, okay. Who's OT8 then?
There are many people, many public people who have made it to OT8. I think Mary Kahn was one of them. She was on Leah Remini's show. I'll tell you right now, the leader, David Miscavige, is not OT8. He is not OT9. He's not OT10. He's not any of those higher ranks. He is OT7 currently. He is alongside Tom Cruise in the rankings. And he believes and has said that no one is good enough to audit him.
Right. So there's definite narcissism there then.
Absolutely. From David, hell yeah.
Right. And maybe a touch of, is it maybe psychotic? Maybe see a wee bit of he probably a wee touch of psychotic. And who knows, maybe a bit of schizophrenia put in there too. You
I
have
think
to have
L. Ron Hubbard was more paranoid schizophrenic than David Miscavige was.
Yeah, 100%. So, and I'm thinking there's the celebrity aspect to it, and you can break this down. I'm not a psychologist, but I sort of like to take the root of psychology in the sense, not pseudo psychology like Scientology, but the breakdown of the psyche of this organization. So you've got these little tiny wee men like John Travolta and Tom Cruise, who are really, really good actors. But you've got John Travolta, he's going bald, he can't help it. He's he probably feels like he's being demasculated. He joins Scientology to look at me. I'm the ruler of this universe. You've got Tom Cruise with the exact same ego problem. He's a tiny little small little man, and he needs filled some way. The movie business isn't doing it for him. They join it. That's the reason why they join it, because they can be the ruler of their universe. Now, then to think about this, who's the leader of Scientology?
David Miscavige.
David Miscavige. So you have this guy Miscavige, and he's OT7, and he says there's nobody in Scientology that can audit him.
That's like saying the Pope. That's like the Pope saying no one can have me in confessional.
Right, because he thinks he is God.
Essentially, he is the quote unquote prophet to L. Ron Hubbard. I mean, he doesn't say he's a prophet because obviously they don't believe in religion. Mm-hmm. They don't believe that it's a religion, but he is essentially the messenger for L. Ron Hubbard and for his works and how things were supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then that goes into all the changes he's made to Hubbard's materials over the years.
Right. So now we've sort of covered the celebrity aspect thing and Miscavige himself. Now, the question I want to know is, once you get to those high levels, what are you told differently from the lower levels?
Once you reach OT3, you're told that there's two incidents. There's one that happened, I believe, 4 quadrillion years ago, which is how Thetans came to be. Right. And then you're told in incident 2 that 76 million years ago, there was a intergalactic confederacy of around 76 planets, most of which were overpopulated. The lord of this confederacy, Xenu, took all these beings, all these creatures in via the front of an income tax investigation.
Yeah, I know. Very interesting.
Took them in, froze all the beings in, I believe it was frozen alcohol and glycol, as that was the only way to trap a Thetan. Took all these frozen bodies and frozen Thetans, carried them to Earth, which was known as Tigiak at the time, and dropped these frozen souls, Thetans, whatever, into the principal volcanoes of Hawaii. After dropping the bodies into the volcanoes, he then detonated hydrogen bombs into it, and this sent the Thetans exploding everywhere, just like blowing everywhere in the wind. And then these ships design. Oh, by the way, I forgot to say the transport ships were very similar to the DC-8 jets of the time, because they said that a lot of the stuff that people were using then was very similar to what it looked like in the 1950s, 1960s. I guess he was just too lazy to come up with his own stuff, so he had to just use what we had.
Fair play. I'm respecting the hustle here. I'm really respecting it.
But so the hydrogen bombs went off, Thetans went everywhere, and then they got taken in by these ships and brought to an implant station where they spent 36 days essentially watching these motion pictures, which implanted them with the ideas of fears, religion, in all these ways to essentially brainwash the Thetans into becoming so dead that they never actually tried to essentially free themselves mentally. So they were trapped on Earth roaming around, and now they cling onto you. There could be hundreds, thousands, millions of them onto you. And after OT3 is when you start actually trying to audit using this, audit these body thetans, BTs off of you. You try to rehabilitate them enough to send them off so they can go pick up a body or do whatever they're going to do as a thetan. Now, thetans are supposed to be godlike and have these godlike abilities once they're fully rehabilitated, but these ones are so dead and so incapacitated that they need this auditing and this help to finally be able to be released back into the wild, essentially.
Right. You've just literally described my acid trip last week. That's basically what that was. Now, I'm only joking about that. I don't take drugs. I don't take acid. But what I will say is, I have took magic mushrooms before.
I've never taken hallucinogenics, but I would absolutely love to try DMT at some point.
What I would say to you is don't try DMT, because DMT is very, very dangerous. I know Joe Rogan likes to run about saying that it's one of the best things to do. DMT is a very, very dangerous drug. And for some people, it can send them mentally insane. And for some reason, I don't know why he keeps saying that he keeps promoting this DMT thing. DMT should be took maybe through the ayahuasca version, where you actually purge and you'd be sick, and it's like a longer process of like 8 to 12 hours. But the smoking of DMT, the synthetic DMT, can be very, very dangerous if it's not controlled. What I would suggest you do if you want to get into psychedelics would be to go to a person who knows what they're talking about and start a very low dose of magic mushrooms. Don't take acid, take the magic mushrooms, because you know what you're going to get, and start your experiences with that. And it's not a drug; it's an enlightenment thing, and you're enlightening yourself, and it's a very good thing to sort of switch your psyche. But to go from nothing to DMT would, in my opinion, would be very, very silly. And you know, a lot of people who take DMT, like Joe Rogan, don't. There's been a lot of people who take DMT and end up in psychiatric wards. Put it that way.
I was going to say the only reason I was even considering taking it was the fact that when you take DMT, you are pretty much incapacitated to the point where you don't move. You're laying there. The trip lasts 5 to 10 minutes tops, at least from an outsider's perspective. To the trippy, it could be a fucking eternity.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. The ayahuasca version, where you purge and you be sick, you know, what they feel is whenever you take the DMT, or sorry, the ayahuasca, and the DMT is produced into your system through the ayahuasca, that whenever you purge, it's all the negative energy coming out of it. And a lot of people who, like, I've got a lot of people that I know that maybe suffered from sexual problems, suffered from mental problems, and they've had the ayahuasca version, and afterwards there was a release of ego, and whatever problems they had in their head was just gone, and it didn't mean anything to them anymore. But I know a lot of people that have smoked the DMT, and first and foremost, it tastes like rubber. It's absolutely disgusting.
I know it smells like mothballs.
Yeah, it's not a good experience. But I would suggest that start off with something very light, like a light magic mushroom, and always be around people that you're very comfortable with and people that you trust. And have like a person that sort of, well, you can trust fully.
A trip sitter.
Yes, because, you know, and have water. Don't be drinking alcohol and things like that. Don't be taking any other drugs. It'll just an experience. It'll just be magic mushrooms, and have a night where, you know, everybody will just can be focused on that, and have one person that isn't taking magic mushrooms, and that's the correct and safe way of doing it. Trust me, I'm Irish. Magic mushrooms are everywhere here. You know, they're absolutely everywhere. This is where leprechauns came from. So sorry, listen, we've talked about everything there. It's actually quite a good thing that, you know, we haven't just been talking about Scientology. We've actually talked about a whole range of subjects. And obviously, you know, that's what podcasting is about. It's not just about talking about one thing, you know. But I'm just trying to get the scenario in my head now. So we talked about the celebrity thing. We've talked about what they learn once you get to a certain height. Now, over the past couple of years, there's been a breakdown of Scientology. Why is that? Have you got enough time to speak about this? Have you another 5 minutes?
Yeah, I have some time.
Yeah, so
I have about 20 minutes.
So the breakdown of Scientology. Why is Scientology now being so frowned upon?
Purely, ever since Operation Chinology back in 2008 occurred on 4chan, It's just gone completely downhill because before that, it wasn't exposed nearly as much as it is today. Ever since Leah Remini's show came out, it's been millions of people have been watching, have been learning about what's going on inside this group. They've been recommending the show to their friends. I think the show has an Oscar or two or something like that, whatever the daytime thing is, an Emmy or whatever. But it's such a famous woman. Most people may have seen her from King of Queens or whatever shows that she was on. They'll recommend the show to her friends. They'll recommend the show to whoever. And then as that word spreads around, people start looking more and more into the show. They had, I think, 3 seasons now. Leah and Mike, the former spokesperson, actually run a podcast together called Fair Game, which is another one of Hubbard's policies. But it's because people see exactly what happened. They don't see the Scientology propaganda machine anymore. They see, oh, I heard a story from these 2 ex-Sea Org members about what it was like to work in management. I learned about what it was like to have your money essentially ripped from you in order to get to these higher levels in the bridge. It's exposing all the problems with it over time has just led to a massive PR problem that David Miscavige, I don't think, will ever be able to recover from.
And that will lead me on to another subject. Who is David Miscavige?
He's 5'1", first off. So I believe he's actually shorter than Tom Cruise.
Wow. He's a 3-year-old boy.
Yeah, he's a 3-year-old boy. He is a Sea Org member. He's technically, his position is chairman of the board of the Religious Technology Center, which revolves around the copyrights and protection of the name, the Dianetics name, the name, basically all the services and stuff that they have. He wasn't really, that position is not supposed to be CEO of Scientology, essentially. But he was in the Sea Org. He and Pat Broker, which is another Sea Org member, back after Hubbard died, were trying to basically fight out who should be the next leader, because Pat and Annie Broker were a couple that were working closely with Hubbard right before he died. They were some of the people who knew about his last whereabouts after he went into hiding in 1980. But somehow David Miscavige managed to take control and kick them out of the picture entirely.
Right. So without, we're not, listen, it seems like Scientology is filled with conspiracies in itself. So, we can go down that route. Do you believe that Miscavige had something to do with Hubbard's death? No,
I personally do not feel that he had anything to do with Hubbard's death. Hubbard was paranoid schizophrenic, essentially paranoid schizophrenic at that time. It's believed that he had what's called nowadays as frontal lobe epilepsy or temporal lobe epilepsy.
Okay.
It can lead to things like hypergraphia, and as we know, that means a lot of writing, and Hubbard was an extremely prolific writer. It can lead to a lot of the symptoms that Hubbard had back in his later years of his life, and even when he started Scientology. But personally, he died still trying to remove his body thetans.
Right, so he actually genuinely believed...
He believed his bullshit.
Oh, okay, well, listen, let's give him credit then. Because I think credit is always due. We know that Scientology's bullshit, but let's give the man credit. He was suffering in his brain. He had an actual disorder that didn't debilitate him to the point where he couldn't move, but he was actually able to create a religion from this and actually believe what he was preaching. And there is something to be said in that, and I always like to talk about positives. So, for instance, if you genuinely believe something, you can actually make things become a reality. And that's what thoughts are. That's what ideas are. Ideas are living things. And in his mind, this was real, and this actually worked, and he done this to his dying day. So I will give him credit that he lived by the sword and he died literally by the sword. And so credit to L. Ron Hubbard for that one. And I don't really like to speak ill of the dead, regardless of what they done. So credit to L. Ron Hubbard for doing that, even though, yes, his whole religion was totally bullshit. So I'm thinking to myself now, we've talked about Miscavige, we talked about Hubbard. Now, the best way to word this, is Scientology progressing or is it regressing?
In what way?
So is it getting more members?
No.
Or is it so it's in a decline then?
It's now pretty much in a constant decline.
So it's in a decline because of the sort of it's been exposed as this fake thing.
It started its decline once Hubbard died, because obviously when the founder's not around anymore, some people aren't going to be as intrigued by what the new guy has to say.
Yeah.
Once he started fucking around with the tech, they went through 2 golden ages of tech where they re-released all the basic books and lectures, they made a bunch of people, like almost their entire membership, go back to the bottom of the bridge and redo everything at their own expense.
So he tried to repatent Scientology, basically.
Yeah, he repackaged it and said, everything before was done wrong. We have new research. This is what Hubbard meant. You have to do it again, and you got to give us more money for it. Do
you think if he had have said, and are you talking about Miscavige here?
Yes, I am talking about Miscavige.
So do you think if he had a sort of presented himself in a way, he didn't, because Miscavige has this God complex about him, I think, do you think if he had went down the route of saying, look, I'm just an apostle of L. Ron Hubbard, I'm here to spread his word, people probably would have listened to him more, instead of, listen, I'm better than L. Ron Hubbard and you should live this way. You shouldn't have listened to L. Ron Hubbard. Do it my way.
I don't think it's necessarily that he said do it my way. He said, one example of things he said during one of the golden ages of tech was such as evil stenographers not properly writing down Hubbard's words. So he's framing it as not my way, but the way it was originally intended to be. This is the pure juice of Scientology that people weren't getting before. We found out all these problems that were going on back then with management. We took care of it. We got all the material back to the way it was originally supposed to be. Right.
I get you. I think if he had went down the route, if he had just scrapped all that and just stayed on the sort of on Hubbard's spectrum with that and never went near, like, that's what I'm saying. A God complex will tear you down, regardless if you're the CEO of a company or a homeless man in the street or a homeless woman in the street. You will be, a God complex is bad for everything. And in this case, thank God for Miscavige's God complex, or maybe a lot of this wouldn't have been exposed if that makes any sense.
Yep, I can totally agree with you there.
Yeah, but it's just crazy to think that in this day and age, another question for you: how long do you think it will take until Scientology is totally eradicated out of society?
That's tough to say. I have a feeling somehow it will still be around in another 50 years. I can say that if it has a downfall, I'm going to say it's going to be anywhere between 50 and 100 years from now.
Well, I'm not
trying to
prophesize
anything.
You're fine. That's a good answer. But do Scientologists believe that aliens are going to come to Earth and take them off?
No.
Is that all crap then?
This isn't a Heaven's Gate type situation that we have here. I'm not sure if you know about Heaven's Gate. If you ever heard of them before, they were a cult that believed that aliens were flying behind Hale-Bopp Comet, and they were the ones who took them out via suicide, who took themselves out via suicide so they could go on this comet and go to the evolutionary level above human. But that's a whole different podcast.
Wow. Does that involve Scientology?
No. This coincided with the time of Scientology, but it had absolutely nothing to do with Scientology. This was a completely separate cult.
So there's a third podcast that we'll be doing talking about Hell's Gate. Did you say
Heaven's Gate?
Heaven's Gate. That's crazy.
There's Heaven's Gate. There's Jonestown. There's oh God, David Koresh and the Branch Davidians. I absolutely love cults and could go into so many details.
Well, yes, of course. Listen, if you want to talk about certain culture, you're more than welcome to come back on and talk about whatever. You just sent me a text and say, well, listen, there's this crazy cult that people should know about. I'm in. That's what I like to do.
Awesome. All right. So
yeah.
What was the subject at hand?
So I actually forget, but I think
Scientologists believe aliens are coming to get them.
So I was told that they believe that there's going to be some reckoning, end of the world type thing, and that spacecrafts are going to come down, lift them, and take them off to some heaven place. Is that true, or is that not true?
There is no Scientology idea of a rapture.
Right.
Right. They just believe that once you die, if you don't go through Scientology, if you don't get the full OT8 up to OT8 processing, that you're going to constantly get reimplanted by those implant stations, and you're going to forget your past lives, and you're just going to be doomed to basically repeat what you do on this earth. You're just going to live a life. You're going to be born. You're going to grow up. You're going to have a family. You're going to have kids. You're going to work, and then you're going to die, and then you're just going to do it all over again, over and over and over and over.
So basically, this is your last shot at getting to OT8.
This is your last shot at getting off the hamster wheel.
Wow. That must be, for somebody who actually believes that must be the anxiety of, I have to work to get to OT8. If I don't get to OT8, then that's me. I'm going to have to go back into this cycle of hell. So like that's crazy. And you know what? I think we should end it on that, because that's a lot to take in. And I think we could talk about, we'll do another podcast talking about the graph sheet, the grid that you showed us there. You can come back on and talk about other subjects. You're a very interesting person, Holly.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you very much for coming on the show. Guys, remember, subscribe and ring the bell. Share and tell your friends. This is a very interesting subject about Scientology, and tonight I have been mind blown, and I cannot wait to talk more about this. Holly, have a very, very good evening.
You as well. Have a great night, Ronan.
Peace.